September's Hidden History from the Archives explores the history of the Bank of Georgetown. The first Bank of Georgetown was incorporated on December 21, 1836. A branch of the Bank of the State of South Carolina also served the residents of Georgetown as early as 1816, but it mostly catered to planters and not to the general public or business community. By July of 1843, the Bank of Georgetown was reporting a dividend of 87 cents on each share to be paid to the shareholders. Robert Ellison Fraser began working as a teller in the Bank of Georgetown in 1848 and later moved up to become a cashier. He stayed in that position until the bank was forced to close because of the war between the states. His signature can be found on currency issued by the bank during that era. After the war, Fraser opened a private bank in Georgetown, and it was the only banking institution for many years. He partnered with Richard Dozier, and their banking house was located on Screven Street near the courthouse. On Christmas night, 1883, a fire broke out on that block of Screven Street, and many of the buildings were damaged or destroyed. The banking house owned by Fraser was damaged, but remained open for business. In addition to his banking house, Fraser served as intendant of Georgetown from 1867 to 1868, and again in 1878 to 1881. He closed his bank in 1889 because of health issues. In 1891, the new Bank of Georgetown was incorporated by W.D. Morgan and opened at 625 Front Street. In March, the Georgetown Times announced the bank was operating with a capital stock of $50,000, and the following men were bank officers: W.D. Morgan, President; J.B. Steele, Vice President; and Jonathan Hazard, Cashier. Over the next several years, the bank sold shares as high as $150 a share, and by 1904, the Bank of Georgetown moved into a newly built 3-story building on the corner of Front and Broad Street. Like Robert Fraser before him, Morgan also served as an attendant of Georgetown from 1891, and when Georgetown received a charter to change from a town to a city, he became mayor of Georgetown, an office he held until 1906. The new Bank of Georgetown was located at 802 Front Street and sat on land originally owned by Mayor Morgan. Plans for the new building were drawn up by Charles Wilson, a leading architect in South Carolina. The new bank officially opened on April 20, 1904, and it towered over Front Street with its 3 stories of architectural wonder. The bank advertised that everything's brand new, even the money. The bank occupied the main floor, the second floor were offices, and the third floor housed 2 meeting rooms. The upper floor could be accessed from a separate entrance, allowing for renters to come and go as they pleased. As the U.S. entered World War I in 1917, the bank showed their support of the war effort by selling Liberty Loan bonds. An ad in a 1918 newspaper advertised that the bank was absolutely safe and that it was the oldest, largest, strongest bank in Georgetown County. In December 1922, the bank advertised that they had a gift for every household. Metal mailboxes will be delivered free to any household who receives mail, as long as supplies last. Call soon and get yours. By December 1927, scandal rocked the Georgetown area when it was announced in a local newspaper that the Bank of Georgetown was closed upon advice of examiners, 3 arrested. The Federal Reserve examiners discovered that fraud had been committed, and 3 clerical employees admitted they had appropriated almost $61,000 for their own use. The bank was forced into liquidation, and a new bank of the same name was quickly formed on February 14, 1928. Bernard Baruch and R. Goodwin Rhett proved their confidence in the bank and took a number of shares from this new institution. W.D. Morgan continued to serve as president, and by the end of 1928, the bank was proving itself stable. When the Depression hit the South, the Bank of Georgetown merged with 9 other banks in South Carolina to form the People's State Bank of South Carolina. A new board of managers was put in place, and it included C.B. Colbert, E.W. Kaminsky, L.H. Co., R.M. Kane, and W.D. Morgan. Morgan would also become the executive vice president of the Georgetown branch and served in that capacity until the Charleston branch of the bank failed on January 2, 1932. The People's State Bank of South Carolina failed to open its doors on January 3, 1932, and the bank went into bankruptcy. A federal judge ordered that it be put up for sale, and on November 13, 1936, Henry Fogle was the high bidder for the property, paying $11,600. 30,000 people in 40 cities across the state were sent checks from the now defunct bank. The beautiful clock that sat on top of the bank was removed and sold to a buyer in Danville, Virginia in January 1937. On August 25, 1938, Mayor William Doyle Morgan died of a heart attack in a hospital in Florence, South Carolina. With his death and the loss of the Bank of Georgetown, Georgetown saw an end of an era of prosperity and progressive thinking. The old bank building was torn down in 1959, and the interior woodwork, bricks, and other items were salvaged and sold to area residents. A new building was built in its place, and various commercial businesses continue to occupy this space.